The police officers who entered the house were confronted with a horrifying scene, unlike anything they had ever encountered before. The stench inside was unbearable, making it nearly impossible to breathe. The body of a young woman lying on the couch had sunken into it and decayed down to the bone, while she was still alive. Lacey Ellen Fletcher was born in 1985 in the small town of Slaughter, Louisiana. Slaughter is located near Baton Rouge and has a population of only about 1,000 people, a quiet place where everyone knows each other. Nothing much usually happens in towns like this, but this particular case cast a grim shadow over the community. Lacey was the only child of Sheila and Clay Fletcher. In her childhood, she was diagnosed with autism, which made her perceive the world differently from other children. She struggled with focus and social interaction. As she grew older, these difficulties became more severe, but her parents refused to place her in a special care facility. Lacey found it hard to keep up in regular school and had very few friends. Nonetheless, she was always kind, cheerful, and smiling. She loved sports and often played outside near her home. Teachers and coaches remembered her as a smart and diligent student. Her parents were well-respected members of the community. Her mother, Sheila, had once worked as an assistant district attorney and later served as an assistant to the mayor. Her father, Clay, worked for a nonprofit organization that helped those in need. They were religious and active members of the community, and no one could have imagined that such a terrible tragedy would occur in their household. At 2:30 a.m. on January 3rd, 2022, Sheila called 911 in a panic, reporting that her daughter was not breathing. When police and emergency responders arrived, they were met with a shocking sight. Lacey's lifeless body was found on a leather couch, almost completely naked, sunken into the cushions up to her shoulders, and covered in feces, maggots, and insects. Her skin showed red sores and ulcers, with flesh rotting down to the bone. She was lying on her left side, with her right hand near her neck, her eyes and mouth wide open. Her legs were crossed, and the stench was overwhelming. The scene was so horrifying that, according to the parish coroner, it was the worst case he had ever seen in his entire career. He later admitted he couldn't eat or sleep for days afterward. Lacey's father, Clay, appeared completely emotionless, showing no visible reaction, while her mother, Sheila, tried to feign sorrow and cried. The couch was placed against a wall, next to a gray dresser neatly stacked with clothes. In front of the couch was a cluttered black table with scattered lotion bottles, talcum powder, wet wipes, nasal spray, and other hygiene items. Nearby was a box filled with DVD discs. Apparently, Lacey had watched movies that were played for her. There were also visible signs of rodent droppings around the couch. The question that inevitably arose during the investigation was clear. How could the parents allow this to happen? How could such seemingly respectable, upstanding people neglect their own daughter in such a horrific way? How could they even live in that house, surrounded by such filth and unsanitary conditions? The young woman was so severely emaciated that at 36 years old, she weighed only 30 kilograms, about 66 pounds. An autopsy revealed that Lacey had not left the couch for approximately 12 years, remaining in those horrifying conditions the entire time. The skin on her back and buttocks had turned black, indicating she had been lying motionless for an extended period. She tested positive for COVID-19, but that infection was not the cause of death. The pathologist determined that her death resulted from extreme medical neglect, which led to malnutrition, starvation, immobility, pressure ulcers, and osteomyelitis. A purulent infection had developed in her bones, which progressed into sepsis. Lacey's death was officially ruled a homicide. It was estimated that she had died 24 to 48 hours before the 911 call was made. According to her parents, they had gone on a weekend trip a few days before her death and found her lifeless body upon returning. They claimed that Lacey's autism had worsened after 9th grade, and that she developed Asperger's syndrome, which led them to isolate her. At that time, she switched to homeschooling. Over the years, Lacey completely disappeared from public view. Many neighbors hadn't seen her in over 15 years. Some newer residents didn't even know the couple had a daughter. When acquaintances asked about her, the parents said Lacey was seriously ill and unable to leave the house due to locked-in syndrome, a rare neurological disorder that causes full-body paralysis, sparing only eye movement. Patients with this condition are completely dependent on caregivers, but remain fully conscious and are able to communicate through eye movements. However, there was no record of such a diagnosis in Lacey's medical history, and it remains unclear who, if anyone, had diagnosed her. The last time Lacey saw a doctor was at age 16 when she was still in school. At that time, she was diagnosed with autism and reported experiencing anxiety. The cause of her paralysis remains unknown. The family lived a very private life and had minimal interaction with others. No one visited their home or had any idea what was happening to Lacey. After her death, her mother posted on social media, "Mom and Dad love you so much." On May 2nd, 2022, Lacey's parents, Sheila and Clay Fletcher, were arrested. Sheila was 64 and Clay was 65. They were charged with second-degree murder. They pleaded not guilty, insisting that Lacey was an adult who made her own decisions. According to them, they couldn't interfere in her life or force her to change, claiming she simply preferred living as a recluse, never leaving the house and remaining on the couch. They stated that Lacey didn't want to use the bathroom and instead relieved herself on a towel placed next to the couch, which they would then clean. They also claimed that Lacey never complained about her condition, which is why they never sought medical help. Her mother said she helped clean and treat Lacey's skin ulcers. All of this seemed implausible. Lacey had been severely malnourished, essentially starved to death, and had developed sepsis. There had never been any previous reports suggesting she was paralyzed, and now her parents were claiming she had chosen this way of life, confined to a couch for 12 years. They had witnessed her deteriorating condition firsthand and done nothing. Yet now they were insisting that she was fine and did not require care. It also raised suspicions that Lacey died precisely while they were away on vacation for a few days. It appeared they had deliberately left her without food or water. The autopsy revealed that the only contents in her stomach were partially digested mint candies. There was no trace of any other food. Moreover, throughout all those agonizing years of Lacey's suffering, not once did the parents reach out to a doctor or caregiver for help. 2 days after their arrest, on May 4th, 2022, Lacey's parents were released from jail on bail, $300,000 each. This decision sparked widespread public outrage. According to the district attorney, the couple had no prior criminal record, and the risk of them fleeing was minimal, so they were allowed to await trial outside of custody. Sheila and Clay tried to portray themselves as grieving, heartbroken parents devastated by the loss of their daughter, but the public didn't believe their display of sorrow. Local residents were shocked and angered by the parents' blatant neglect. The Fletcher's attorney released a statement claiming that the couple did not wish to relive their pain through the media and would not be giving any interviews. He added that they had experienced tremendous emotional suffering over the years, and any parent who has lost a child could understand what they were going through. However, could their pain truly be compared to that of other grieving parents? Parents who had tried everything to save their children? Lacey's parents could have helped her if they had sought medical assistance, but it seemed they simply lacked the will. The district attorney declared her death a homicide and demanded a full investigation, citing fatal neglect. At that time, it was still being determined how to classify the crime: negligent homicide, manslaughter, or second-degree murder. Negligent homicide carries a sentence of up to 5 years, manslaughter up to 40 years, and second-degree murder can lead to life in prison without parole. The prosecutor stated he would pursue second-degree murder charges, as the parents had failed to take even the most basic actions to prevent their daughter's death or improve her condition. They were her only caregivers and had a duty to protect her. On February 5th, 2024, the Fletchers were set to contest their charges. They continued to plead not guilty to manslaughter. Their attorney introduced a defense based on what is known as learned helplessness, a psychological concept describing a condition in which a person, after being subjected to repeated distressing circumstances, becomes passive and stops trying to change their situation. However, learned helplessness is not a medical disorder and is not considered treatable. The Fletchers tried to convince the judge they had been emotionally broken by years of their daughter's suffering and begged for understanding and leniency. After 18 months of denying all responsibility, they eventually gave in and pleaded guilty to manslaughter in an effort to receive a lighter sentence. The case shocked the public, particularly members of the church community to which the couple belonged. Still, a few supporters stood by them, describing Clay and Sheila as loving parents who cared for their daughter until the end and were being unfairly vilified. Sheila, in particular, kept insisting to investigators that she had always been by Lacey's side, feeding her, treating her, and spending time with her. But if that were true, such a horrific tragedy would never have happened. Lacey had practically rotted into the couch. There were no words needed. The scene spoke for itself. Remarkably, Sheila always appeared clean and well kept, according to acquaintances. No one suspected the horror unfolding inside their home. The public demanded a life sentence, and hatred toward the couple was intense. Nevertheless, on March 20th, 2024, the court sentenced Clay and Sheila to just 20 years in prison, followed by 20 years of supervised probation. Their sentence was reduced due to their eventual guilty plea. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, support it with a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's discuss the story in the comments.